So it looks like we have somewhat of an update on whether or not M.O.D.O.K or Crossbones will eventually become a villain sector, like how basically all the other bosses are in Marvel's Avengers. So I'll talk about exactly what's been happening a couple days ago. So if you enjoyed this video today, feel free to like and subscribe for future Marvel content. So on Twitter, a user by the name of @AlienFodder had tweeted out that coming straight from Brian Wagner, which if you don't know who Brian Wagner is, he is a dev for Marvel's Avengers, and I would consider one that a lot of people know of. So I don't know if I would say the main dev per se, but I would say one of the main devs that just people know of. So it said, coming straight from Brian Wagner, for those of you who, like me, had been hoping for a villain sector that would feature either M.O.D.O.K or Crossbones, it simply cannot happen because their combat mechanics have been created specifically for the encounters that they're a part of in their respective stories, and therefore are not extensive enough to be transferred into a villain sector. Now, I will continue on to say, though, that Brian Wagner had came back and he had clarified that he said that this is why they have not happened so far. He was not ruling out the possibility of M.O.D.O.K or Crossbones being a villain sector in the future. So I think it is important to say that he did not say they cannot happen at all, but he did say that this is the reason why they have not happened so far. So at first, a lot of people I know I saw had kind of, I guess I would say, a knee-jerk reaction to this, and kind of like trashed exactly what was being said because they hadn't, I guess, had seen the Brian Wagner piece about him saying that's why they haven't happened so far. But I will say that I don't necessarily disagree with them in the fact that they're right with some of the points, because even if the reason why we haven't gotten the M.O.D.O.K or the Crossbones sectors so far is because of their limitations due to being intertwined with the campaign that they reside, I still think, and I really forget who it was that I watched this video on. It might have been High Ruler, I think, but I honestly forget. But he made a good point where he said M.O.D.O.K was understandable because M.O.D.O.K was like the end game boss, and they might not have anticipated how much multiplayer content they were going to have in this game. But with Crossbones, there should have been no excuse for him to not be a villain sector after the fact. And I agree. I absolutely agree with this statement. Now I know Brian Wagner has said this doesn't mean they won't become villain sectors, but I wholeheartedly agree with Crossbones. They should have thought well enough ahead to know that they want to implement Crossbones as a villain sector. And I hope that going forward, that when they add more bosses into the game, that they anticipate having them as villain sectors as well, just to keep the content as fresh as possible so we can get some new dailies, because we've obviously been running Maestro villain sectors basically non-stop along with Abomination and Taskmaster since Hawkeye dropped, and obviously Abomination and Taskmaster well before that. So, I mean, it's kind of a double-edged sword right now. It's kind of a stupid... No, I shouldn't say stupid, but it is kind of like a sad reason as to why we haven't got them in villain sectors so far, at least with Crossbones. But it is nice to kind of hold out hope that we might potentially be getting M.O.D.O.K and Crossbones in villain sectors in the future, because I still think this is something that they're potentially working on, especially M.O.D.O.K, because I know... Obviously, M.O.D.O.K was the end game boss, so basically since the game dropped, the people have been asking for a M.O.D.O.K villain sector so they can replay that fight. So I don't know if they've been working on it that entire time, but I know this is a highly requested thing that people have been asking for since the game dropped. So comment down below if you would want M.O.D.O.K and Crossbones in their own respective villain sectors to switch things up. And that's about all I have for this video, and I appreciate you for watching.